friends, thank you for joining me. I am very excited to be part of the Des Moines Botanical Gardens Health and Wellness in the Garden. And I just want to tell you a little bit about myself before we get started. I'm a Master Gardener here in Polk County. I also do some gardening classes at the Grimes Library. I work with a nonprofit called Cultural, and I have the opportunity to do wonderful things like this, to be involved with the Des Moines Botanical Gardens. So I'm going to do a series called Mother Nature's Medicines, and it's going to be for a few weeks, and then we'll move on to something else. So I want to get started telling you a little bit about what it means when we talk about what nature provides us as far as medicine to be healthy, and not only for our bodies but for our minds. And I want to start off by talking a little bit about just being in the garden allows you to be healthier. There have been studies that have been done that show the different microbes and bacteria in the soil help your overall well-being. And I'm going to have a link that kind of tells you a little bit about that if you want to have some more information about that. Also, I want to talk about when we are talking about getting our wellness and our medicine from the garden. A lot of times we talk about how food is like our medicine. So it's not just necessarily growing specific herbs or spices that allow you to have things that provide medicinal properties, but just a whole lifestyle that revolves around being in the garden. So, using things in nature have been used for health and for medicine, have been used for many, many centuries by a variety of different groups. So for instance, we know that different indigenous groups and various Native American tribes use things that they found in nature for their healing properties. When I was in my 20s, I had the opportunity to work with the Lakota people on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and one summer we did a science camp, and I had the privilege of being able to go around the Badlands in western South Dakota and learn about the various things that were used by the Lakota people traditionally for their medicinal properties. For instance, they would use different roots and tubers, and they would find things that just were growing around that area for various healing properties. Some of the things that I remember that we found and that we talked about included things like wild sage, and that was used for stomach ailments and for colds. Also purple mallow, bitterroot, witch hazel. A lot of times people are familiar with the healing properties of the purple coneflower or the echinacea plant. So these things have been used by indigenous people for many, many generations for their healing properties. When I ask people, tell me what you know about when we talk about Mother Nature's medicines. What are things that maybe you already know about, that you already use? And so what are some things that come to your mind when you think about items that you might grow or that you find in nature that have different healing properties? I know for many people, one of the things that always comes up is the aloe vera plant. And so I know a lot of people are probably familiar with that. So that's one thing that always comes to mind when people think of different things in the garden that provide those medicinal benefits. And when you think about, well, what is it that you want to plant in your garden that's going to provide you the health benefits that you need? So everybody's kind of different that way, because based on what your needs are and the things that perhaps you want to feel better, how you want to feel better, might determine what you're going to plant. One of the things that I always say, and it's not just, like I said, the herbs and spices, but also the things that you're growing, just your fruits and vegetables. So when people ask me, what are the things that I should grow in my garden? Well, you want to grow things, of course, that you're going to eat, because if you grow things that you think, oh, they have a lot of health benefits or medicinal value, but I'm never really going to eat them, or I don't know what to do with them, then really there's no point in growing that. Of course, I always encourage you to try something new or something different that perhaps you normally don't grow. Like you might think, well, I always grow peppers, I always grow tomatoes, and yes, those are very good for you. Actually, the hot peppers have a lot of medicinal value, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But think of other things too that perhaps you're not used to growing that first of all, you think, well, yes, they're probably very healthy, but try something that maybe you wouldn't try. Maybe try one or two things that you wouldn't normally try. But for the most part, grow things that you know that you enjoy and that you're going to eat and benefit from. So one of the things I was going to mention was beet. And I'm not a huge fan of beets, but I was thinking, well, this year I'm going to plant some beetroot because it has a lot of health benefits. And there's a lot of research that's being done about the health benefits of beet. So that's one thing that maybe I'm going to throw in my garden and try this year that maybe I wouldn't normally grow. But because I know it has such good health benefits, I'm going to try that this year. But think about what are some things that you enjoy and that you want to grow. So I tell people, think of items that you like to buy from the grocery store that maybe when you buy them from the grocery store aren't going to have all the health benefits that they would normally have if you grew them in your own garden. So think about the list that I'm sure many of you heard of, the Dirty Dozen. So those items that you find in the store that perhaps aren't going to be as healthy as if you grow them in your garden. So strawberries is one of them, different greens like kale and lettuces, spinach, those things are also going to be part of that Dirty Dozen. If you're interested in that, the Environmental Working Group has a list that they every year say, okay, these are the fruits and vegetables that you want to kind of be leery of buying that aren't grown either locally or grown chemical free or pesticide free, whatever that case might be. So you can look at that list and maybe decide from that. It's like, okay, well, I want to eat as healthy as I can. I know that spinach and kale are really healthy. I know that greens are really healthy. But when I'm getting them in the store, are they going to be as healthy for me as if I grow them in my garden? And greens are really easy to grow. I want to talk about one green that I have started already. And this is a mustard green. And mustard greens are also very healthy for you. There's lots of benefits from eating mustard greens. And the nice thing about mustard greens is not only eating the greens in the spring, but then also when it goes to seed, you can then save the seeds, which I did from last year. And then you can save these seeds, and not only can you use them in your cooking and making up different remedies, but you can also use them then to continue planting throughout the season of your different mustard greens. So that's one thing that I would like to have, of course, along with the kale and the lettuces. I like to plant those. The strawberries too, another thing, and you think, well, I don't have a big area for a strawberry patch, so what are my options? What are some things I can do? What are some of the things I can do? So you can do something like put them in different containers. So I'm going to show you an example here. Okay, so if you don't have the space in your garden to grow things like strawberries or lettuce greens, you can put them in a container like this. And then they'll just grow down through here. You can also put them in like a hanging basket. You can really put them in anything. You can put them in a variety of different containers. And then you can have fresh strawberries. And of course you're not going to have enough to make dozens and dozens of strawberry jam, but you'll have enough to put in your morning cereal or to slice up on your oatmeal, things like that. So, that's one option. Okay, so in addition to maybe growing some things that would be on that Dirty Dozen list, so that you want to make sure that you're getting all the health benefits of things that are fresh and just picked from your garden or from your containers, think about when you are deciding what to plant, think about what are the things that you want to address in your own personal life. So for instance, let's say, oh, well, I have trouble sleeping at night, or I, need something in the evening that I can have that's going to help relaxing. So, you might want to think about maybe growing chamomile. So chamomile is a nice, and maybe many of you already know about chamomile. So you can grow chamomile. This I grew last year, and then, you just use the flowers, and you can make a really nice tea for that. And chamomile has been used for many generations for the calming and soothing effects it has, and I'm sure many of you know about chamomile tea already. So perhaps you want to plant some chamomile. If you have issues with, let's say that, oh, I feel nauseous or I get upset stomach, so maybe you want to plant some fennel. And so many of you are probably familiar with like the big fennel bulbs that you see at the grocery stores. Well, this type of fennel actually you grow for the seeds, and the seeds will be big and sweet, and they make a great tea. They're even good for just like if you have an upset stomach. there's times when we travel, and if someone is having motion sickness or feeling nauseous, they can just take a handful of these and chew it, and that helps calm their stomach. So, if you think like, okay, I do have some issues with stomach issues, then perhaps you want to plant some fennel. If you have things like, oh, well, I tend to get a lot of colds, well, perhaps you want to make sure that you grow some garlic. Now, I would encourage everybody to grow garlic, because garlic can be used in so many ways, and not just the bulbs, but you can use the greens. You can use later in the spring when the scapes come out, you can use the scapes, and they are delicious. They have lots of different beneficial properties. So garlic is one that I would encourage everybody to use. And maybe you're thinking, well, I don't really like the strong flavor of garlic. Garlic is too strong for me, or it doesn't set well with me. Well, there are many varieties of garlic. There are mild varieties or sweeter varieties. There's, we went to a garlic festival one time when we were in Vermont, and I remember they had like garlic candy and garlic, desserts made out of garlic. So there's so many different varieties, so you can find one that's going to be good for you and that it sets well with you. I was just going to show you here that I just went and grabbed some garlic from my garden that's growing, and I'm just going to well, there's a couple things I was thinking about doing it. I was thinking, just cleaning it up, and you can just saute it up and roast it and toss it with some pasta. You can chop it up and put it in salads, and so it's pretty mild in this form. So, like I said, you can use all different parts of the garlic, and as we go on later in the season and the garlic starts to grow, I'm going to show you some ways to use garlic. But that garlic is a great thing to have in your garden when we talk about the health benefits. I remember when I was growing up, and whenever my mom would have a cold, and she would make a soup. It was a garlic and black pepper and turmeric soup to help with colds and help with congestion. So it can be used in a lot of different ways. Another thing that I want to mention, these are actually chives. Chives are, of course, part of the onion family. And, sometimes people ask me, how can you tell the difference between something that's from the onion family and something from the garlic family? And a good way to tell is things from the onion family will have like these, they're like tubular, they're like, it's all the way round. And if you look at the garlic, these greens are flat. So that's a good way to tell the differences between those. I want to talk about yarrow a little bit as well. So again, what to plant. So if you, tend to have a lot of colds, you tend to have issues with, sinuses, things like that, garlic is a great one for that. Another one, if you suffer from cough or issues with your throat, thyme is a good thing to grow. So I like to grow lemon thyme, but there's lots of different kinds of thyme, and you can make like a tea with that, and that is really good. So, depending on what type of, there's English thyme, there's lots of different kinds of thyme. I usually try to grow 2 or 3 different kinds because I really like the different benefits of thyme. If you are thinking, well, I want to have something in my garden that helps me clear my mind in the morning, that gives me, helps me with my memory, kind of wakes me up, then plant things that have kind of a citrusy or lemony scent to them. So things like lemongrass, things like lemon balm, lemon mint, those types of things. So last year I grew a bunch of lemongrass, and the thing about lemongrass is, and I'll show you a good way how you can grow that. Just buy something that you can get from the grocery store, a piece that you can get from the grocery store. But you can't winter it here. So you have to, I dig it up, I put it in a pot, I bring it in, and then in the spring I take it back out, and then it spreads, and I have lots of stalks of lemongrass. So I usually then take that and just dry the stalks out, and then we have dried lemongrass. And not only can you use that for cooking, but you can also, make a tea out of it. Lots of different things you can do with lemongrass that have lots of good benefits. So, we talk about different herbs, talk about the different greens like cilantro and parsley, those types of things. So those are, I always tell people, they're AC, they're high in vitamin A, C, and K. So if you want to I want to boost those vitamins in my diet, I like to, instead of thinking okay, I take a vitamin C supplement every day. Okay, well, what are things that you can include in your garden and from nature get those vitamins? And so things like parsley. You hear about parsley all the time, and how a lot of times when you get green smoothies, there's people always adding parsley to green smoothies. And so parsley is one of those ones that has a lot of nutrients and that a lot of vitamins that are going to be healthy for you. And a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, at the end of this segment, I'm going to include links of different papers or research or just general information if you want to know more about, the herbs that are high in these vitamins, about like I mentioned already, the dirty dozen, about greens and how are they beneficial. And, and the thing about cilantro too, I was mentioning about the mustard, how you can use the greens and then you can use the seeds, the spice of it. Same thing with like cilantro. So you can use the greens, and then of course when it goes to seed, those pods are then out coriander. So then you can use the coriander pods. I think I have some of those here too. So you can, so you have not only the benefits of using or having the greens, but then you also have the benefits, here I'll just let you take a look at those. You also have the benefits of the seeds or then the spice that comes from that herb. And so it's fresh, it's fragrant, and it's gonna have, because you didn't buy it, that's been sitting on a grocery shelf for who knows, 6 months, 1 year, who knows how fresh it is, right? But that this came from your garden, and like I harvested this last fall, so of course we're in March now, so it's been a few months, but I'm saving those to plant, but that's something that you can use right away, so that and cilantro, for those of you that plant cilantro, that it goes to seed really quick, so you can harvest the seeds, save a few, replant the coriander, and then have fresh cilantro throughout your season. So a couple of things I want to mention here. I just like to mention this. This is lamb's ear, and I know a lot of people have this in their yard, and they probably don't think of it as something as medicinal, but actually a lot of indigenous groups use this as a dressing for when somebody would have a wound or something, the fuzzy sleeves, and they have antibacterial properties. So I just wanted to mention that, because things that you don't think about in your garden that are used for medicinal reasons. Sage is another one, and this is of course dried sage from my garden last year. And the nice thing about sage is it's a perennial, so you plant it and then make sure that it's somewhat protected in the winter, and it'll come back year after year. So this was just I had from last year, but not only as a seasoning, but it also has a lot of great medicinal value. All right, well, I want to again thank you for joining our series here with the Des Moines Botanical Gardens on health and wellness in the garden. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you soon, and hopefully next time when we do our next segment, we can address some of the questions that you might have. And until then, happy gardening.